Hello, thank you again for listening. This is Bintel Powell, CEO of Bandit Publishing. Please click the subscribe button. We are doing a number of these. We're going to be releasing lesson plans. And so we would love to make sure that we stay in contact with you. So please hit the subscribe button. Today we're going to talk about data and how data is interpreted in my experience, doing this now for about 15 years in education, how the data can sometimes be used and how it can be misleading. And then what the data says about education and some of the more popular engineering or technology programs that are in the market, what their impact has been, and why there is this need for change. And some of the challenges also, I want to discuss some of the challenges in the culture of education that, when coupled with this use or this dependence on data, makes it impossible to move the needle forward. Now, this is what changed everything. The Industrial Revolution transformed economics that had been based on agriculture and handicrafts into economics based on large-scale industry, machinized manufacturing and factory systems. New machines, new power sources, and new ways of organizing work made existing industries more productive and efficient. Basically, technology moved society forward, and many theologists believe that it wasn't Abraham Lincoln that freed the slaves. It was the Industrial Revolution that made slaves obsolete. And that Abraham Lincoln knew that throughout the rest of the world, slavery was considered a sin against humanity. And if America was to sell its machines and compete in this industrial revolutionized world, nobody would buy the machines from America if they knew that America still was using slave labor. It was chattel slavery. So Abraham Lincoln, with the invention of the the inception of the Industrial Revolution, specifically the invention of the machine, had to free the slaves. It had to happen. And that's what freed the slaves, the invention of the machine, technology. And as I've said many times, technology always moves society forward. In this program that we call the formula, we don't tell students that we're teaching them to do engineering. We don't mention entrepreneurship. We do mention entrepreneurship, but we do not mention engineering until they're way deep in it and emotionally attached to whatever they've created. In their minds, what gets them excited and why they are completely engaged in this class is that we tell them we're teaching them to make a money machine. So in my tenure of education, I've heard a lot of things about what education is and what its value is. And some people, I've heard the best education is travel, right? I've heard also that education is 80% exposure and 20% learning your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s. So, again, I guess it speaks to the notion that travel is the best education. In that spirit, Robert Schultz, who was a coffee bean salesman, went to Europe and saw the way coffee was being sold in Europe, and then came back with this idea for Starbucks and turned that into him being, a billionaire. What I've also heard is that education or this formula, when I showed this to academicians that had been a lot more tenured than me, they told me that the formula was the conversation that happens at the dinner table of the wealthy top percent, that does not happen for poor working class people. Poor working class people don't have a dinner table. So what this is basically saying is that the best teachers are your parents, right? And to that point, just to speak about Bill Gates and just to speak historically, Bill Gates' his father was in the Army, and coding is something that was taught in the Army. coding was not being taught in the public school system. That's just something that's come about lately, like teaching coding and computer programming. It was primarily in the Army, right? So it's my suspicion that Bill Gates learned coding from his father. Right, and when his father came home from World War II, the GI Bill gave everyone free education, and it created the largest middle class in the history of this country. So, it's my theory and Bill Gates' mother was on the board of IBM, and that's how Bill Gates got his operating system in every computer throughout the country. His mother set him up with a meeting with the CEO of IBM. And that's how his program, his Microsoft Windows program, exploded all over the world. Bill Gates' father taught him how to code, and Bill Gates, as a boy, was doing the accounting software for the high school that he went to in Seattle. So this speaks to the fact that the parents are really the primary educators for children who are super successful. As we at Bandit Publishing have identified a problem that, in addition to students being disengaged and dropping out of school, crime going up, destroying property values, we have identified a long-term problem in the fact that technology is always responsible for moving society forward. We are moving from an age, from an industrial revolution age to an information and technology age. And if disenfranchised students, and this does not necessarily mean just Black and Latino students, but all students that are not part of the top 1%, are not involved in the technology conversation to the tune of creating and owning technology, that is a very, very serious long-term problem when you think of the history of this country built on the backs of Black slaves. In light of that hard reality that obviously makes us all uncomfortable, some theologians that have studied the Black experience believe that entrepreneurship for Black and Latino students who are not necessarily going to be welcomed into the corporate infrastructure at the highest possible levels, at the highest pay rates, with open arms, believe that entrepreneurship is not just a wish list item. It's a civil right. It's a necessity. So our solution to this is to engage students with the allure of entrepreneurship and mix it with all of the technological necessity of the present and the future of STEM. This is a genre of engineering and STEM, and not just STEM as far as understanding math and engineering and technology, or just doing the mathematical computation, but being able to invent and discover places that need new technology in the way that engineering is taught at the Ivy League. And this genre of STEM that we have been pioneering for the last 15 years is called eSTEM. To my knowledge, we are the only providers of this eSTEM, and the history of it says that it is particularly successful with engaging students that are Black and brown students. And if you look at social media, specifically Instagram, just to focus on Instagram, young ladies, whether they are dancers or strippers or Instagram models, they are all calling themselves entrepreneurs, because this is because they've seen the success of entrepreneurs like Kanye West and Jay-Z. The rap industry and the entertainment industry and the athletes have shown them that entrepreneurship is the way to go. All right. I mean, if you look on anybody's Instagram page and their designation, how they're labeling themselves is as an entrepreneur. So, and this is further evidenced by the fact that education was training young people to get jobs that were going to be stable, that they were going to be able to walk into one job and stay there for the rest of their life. That is no longer the case. There is no such thing as job stability. And as industries from the Industrial Revolution have innovated in their management styles, which we'll take a look at later, many people believe that education has not evolved. It is not innovating. It is an industry that is living in the past. And this is why there is a dropout crisis in America. And this dropout crisis is more acute in the African American and Latino community. When these kids were polled and asked why they dropped out, they said that they didn't believe that what they were learning in school was going to prepare them for success in the real world. And it is also a fact that everyone knows that the best way to cure at-risk behavior is with a clear and visible path to success. Right? So if students are acting out in the classroom, you have to sort of sit back and say, well, why do they believe that what they're learning here is not going to help them be successful? They don't have parents who are the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, so they don't have any reason to believe in education. And in closing, I just want to say that, when you go into a boxing gym, you see the kids and the kids in there are well behaved, even in light of the fact that there's a possibility they can get in the ring and get beat up. And I've experienced that. All right, I've been in the ring, beat up, and I just did it. Why do we do this? Why are we so well behaved when we're in this boxing gym when there's obviously a fair amount of pain to be endured? It's because we believe that we're being taught to be successful. So whenever people believe that they're being taught and the outcome of these teachings are going to end in their success, their behavior will follow suit. So if teachers are burnt out, which they are, and they're dealing with behavioral issues, which they are, and kids are just off the wall, it's because fundamentally those children don't believe that what they're learning in that building is going to prepare them for success in the real world. And with all of the benefits of teaching entrepreneurship and STEM, not just academically but for the future, we believe that mixing entrepreneurship and STEM not only gives students the ability to exercise the skill sets that are needed to be successful in high school, in college, and career, but it gives them the skill sets it gives them the engagement that they want, because they are the customer. And essentially, rule number one in business is that the customer is always right. So this is the book cover, and this all stems from a book, an autobiographical book about a young man, myself, who set out to discover the ingredients of a formula, or what he calls a money machine, which is really in line with the whole notion of machines and the Industrial Revolution. I think it plays well into that narrative. And when we're in the class, the students we talk about entrepreneurship and what an entrepreneur is, because that's a hot button topic. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur now, so the kids love it. And when we're fortunate enough to work with some schools, the kids really, once they realize what they're doing, they come at the teachers and the principals and they say, "Can we really start our own company?" And they set out to really start their own company. They take it very, very serious. But throughout the class, we don't mention the engineering part. We tell them that we're going to teach them how to make a machine. Basically, we're teaching them how to make a money machine, which is a very exciting and a very sexy proposition. I mean, who doesn't want a money machine in their house? And essentially, that's what a company is. A company is a money machine, and we approach it as an engineer does, with an input and an output. The input is information, and the output is capital, which is really in line with the information age. So, this is something that we can, it's very simple. If you're an educator and as a salesperson in the corporate world, I had to come in there and I had to explain high-level technology to people who had no understanding of what tech is in a very simple way. And I had to do this quickly, be quick enough for them to take a meeting and then say they were going to do business with me to the tune of hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. So that is the goal of the book, to simplify all of this, to simplify all this tech. Because if you're a teacher and you can't make it simple, then you're not a good teacher, and myself included, right? So this is very engaging to not just the children, but the parents as well. What usually happens is when we give the kids the book, the parents steal the book, and then we have to give the kid another book. And that's a good thing, because we want the kids, we want the parents to understand what's in the book, and we want them to become partners in managing the process for their children, as is happening with the children of the top 1%. Remember, their parents are teaching them this at their dinner table, because their parents are the owners and CEOs and entrepreneurs that are making these companies. So, we've had great success with this, and if I have to convince you that telling a kid, an at-risk kid or honor roll student, that we're going to teach them how to make a money machine, once they realize that this is real and it's not a flight of fancy and this is a real formula, if engagement, you can't teach anybody anything if they're not interested in it. Could you imagine that, teaching somebody how to cook if they hate water, or if they hate juice, or they don't like food, which sounds ridiculous. Who doesn't like food? But can you imagine that? Can you imagine teaching somebody to play the guitar if they don't like music? It's just not going to work. So from an engagement standpoint, the notion of making a money machine in tandem with the desire for everyone right now in pop culture to be an entrepreneur is a win-win. And I don't think you need data to get that. It is important that we look at the history of education as a result of the revolutions, the agricultural revolution, which was basically fueled on the backs of free African slave labor, and which led to the Industrial Revolution, which, it is our thesis, and many people agree, that was the reason why the slaves were freed, because of the invention of the machine. And now we are moving into the information revolution and the technology revolution, and the prior revolution, the Industrial Revolution, was the reason. Because of it, corporations had to reinvent the way they managed their workers, and education was actually invented because of the Industrial Revolution. People couldn't have people that weren't educated and didn't have their wits about them when they were operating these large machines. So education was actually an experiment that was designed to teach workers how to operate heavy machinery, and which led to various forms of industry and mass production of machines and cars, and where we are today. And there are different management styles. The X style of management, which was essentially designed for the Industrial Revolution, and then the Y style and the Z style. And these innovations in management were as a direct reflection of the progression and the invention of the machine. The unfortunate part here is that education has essentially not reinvented itself much at all. I guess the failures and the inability to educate the masses into the American dream have been consistent for the last 100, 200 years, or however long, whatever, since time the Industrial Revolution created the need for massive education. So now we're on the brink of another revolution, as I said before, the Industrial Revolution, and it is more important now than ever that education really take a look, the industry of education really take a look at where the industry is going. And industry, as I said before, is going in a direction where everyone is going to need to understand technology. Machines are going to take over. Elon Musk is predicting that American society, or the world, is going to there's not going to be enough people, and machines are going to be able to do jobs a lot better than people can. So there's going to be a surplus of of human beings. And it's Elon Musk's theory that society will have to pay people just to exist. So basically, what we're saying here is that education must keep up with the times, or else I've heard some people say that YouTube may displace the entire Department of Education because people are learning real skills on YouTube. So we believe that the innovation of entrepreneurship mixed with technology engineering from an innovation standpoint is the key to is the future of education, is the key to preparing all students to defend themselves in this information age. So, and this is obviously very scary to people, especially to teachers who, to put yourself in their shoes, they have to deal with the Common Core, they have to deal with all these different education models coming after them. So in an attempt to solve this problem, we at Bandit Publishing, especially as it relates to eSTEM, provide teachers with online webinar sort of classes in this format, the exact same format that you're watching this video, that the teachers and the students can learn the fundamentals of eSTEM together. And just to dovetail, innovation is the key. Innovation is the best way to create money. Any economist will tell you that the two best ways to create revenue and to create lots of money, or to manufacture money, is through war and through innovation, through disruptive innovation. And I think one of the things that really differentiates our program from the other technology programs that are out there is that we give students a rubric and a logic statement that allows them to reverse engineer any innovation. Meaning you can take it, and reverse engineering is a very, very powerful tool that was used in world wars, where engineers would create planes, and their planes would shoot down the enemy's plane, and they would come out, take the enemy's plane, take it back to the lab, reverse engineer it, figure out how those engineers created it, and then design their planes to deal with the new innovations of the planes in these dogfights. Reverse engineering and all of these strategies are really a fundamental and are originated from war. But and many people say that business is war, right? And that's how CEOs feel. A lot of their language is based in war. But getting back to innovation, we have a tool. Not only do we have these lesson plans that will walk your teachers through all of these different lesson plans that may be foreign to them, to ease the burden and to ease the pain, so that they don't have to feel like they'd have to fight against this because it's something new. Not only are they going to learn it along with the students, but we have these logic statements that will allow students to reverse engineer any product out there, figure out how it was created, and then start to innovate on their own, which none of our competitors have. So this is very, very engaging to your students. Remember, they're entrepreneurial minded. Pop culture is drilling into their minds. On Instagram, they're all calling themselves entrepreneurs. This is what your students want. So as a teacher, if you want to gain I don't want to say control, because some teachers don't like when you say control, but if you want them to be completely engaged and you don't want them acting out, and you want them to, march to the beat of your drum, then give them what they want. Give them what they want, which is entrepreneurship. We need them to be technologically sound to defend themselves, and you need them to calm down and to study and see academics as the value that it is. Everybody wins in this situation. And so we believe that this is a win-win, and the value proposition, not just for the students but the teachers, is clear. Now, although this is an issue that is not native or only in the African American and Latino community, this notion of disengagement and apathy as far as academia is concerned, we are usually asked when we come into a new school, do you have data to support the fact that your brand of engineering and entrepreneurship, eSTEM, is successful? And we do. we do, and we have empirical data, and we've recorded a lot of the interactions in the class with the students so that teachers can see what it looks like in the classroom. But we compete with certain programs. For Project Lead the Way is probably the one that we run into quite a bit, and P-TECH. Those are the two engineering programs. And P-TECH and Project Lead. Well, P-TECH is how I learned to engineering. Just doing the math and not knowing why you're doing it, but just solving all the formulas and basically being taught engineering as if you're a technician, with no conversation about how to identify where you need to use new technology, no ability to become an entrepreneur like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. That, as I've already said, is only delegated to the engineers that go to Ivy League schools, and that's why it's so hard to get into these Ivy League schools, and that's why they cost so much money. Because the pot of the end of gold is that the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is that they're going to become CEOs. That's where you go to be a CEO, and you get paid $8 million a year. All right, so these companies, Project Lead the Way, that we compete with, when people talk about outcomes, they say, well, after these kids have gone through your program and you've tracked them out of school, where are they going? Are they becoming successful engineers, right? And quickly, I don't know any school that has data on the students that have left the school. All right, I know Northeastern doesn't know anything about me other than how much money I owe them. All right, so that's a very strange question, but if we're going to just say, okay, let's look at the kid. P-TECH and Project Lead the Way have been in business for 20 years, if not more, right? So we look at the data here, and if P-TECH and Project Lead the Way are supposed to be creating engineers and increasing the number of engineers and technology workers in the industry, because that's what education is designed to do. It's prepping the kids and preparing them for jobs, right? Why are the numbers the way they are? Why is there only 3% of engineers in this country African American? Why have these numbers been consistent over the last 10 years, as this chart and the data here shows? This is and as an engineer, I've spoken about this. These models of these. First of all, these are not real engineering programs other than P-TECH. Project Lead the Way is giving you a flavor of engineering, and because there are teachers that have never worked in engineering or maybe not engineers, they have no idea that Project Lead the Way is not real engineering. In their mind, rightly so, P-TECH and Project Lead the Way are the best in breed, because they are. They are. There's if I was a teacher and I was an administrator and I had to choose, and there was no eSTEM program available, I would choose Project Lead the Way and P-TECH. I would probably do both, right? But the nuances is that teachers and anybody, I've studied jazz guitar, I've studied soccer and baseball, and I can tell you that teachers, my mother studied art. I went to the Art Students League with her for years as a child, and I can tell you that 90% of the time, I was being taught these disciplines, whether it was music or art. My mother was studying art by teachers whose main agenda was to make sure that we kept coming back every weekend and giving them $30 or $50 or $100 per lesson. The last thing they wanted to do was teach us everything they knew and make us better than them, and then all of a sudden we don't need them anymore. That's not what teachers do. It is possible, and it is very common for teachers to teach you just enough to keep you thinking you're learning something, and you're not getting good, and you don't realize that this is happening to you until you start competing with other people who have better instructors than you. That is primarily what's happening, and the data that educators always say, well, do you have data to support this? The data supports that these programs, although they may sound good when there's nothing else available that's better, and there is nothing else available that's better until you run into something like entrepreneurship and the design engineering synthesis called eSTEM, there is nothing better other than this. Or somebody might invent something else. So when people talk about data, and many times educators try to think they're going to stop us by saying, well, do you have data? Another thing I want to say is that the design of the school systems and the fact that these schools are very at risk. It is literally impossible to get data from a school when the teachers are burnt out, don't want to learn anything new. The principals can't force them to learn anything new. It's a teeth-pulling exercise just to get the teachers to go through the lesson plans. How are you supposed to get data in that scenario? You're not. You're not going to get data. So, in my experience, the fact that some programs, and in certain instances we don't have data, is not the fault of the program. It's the design of the school and the infrastructure and the hierarchy and the political makeup of education itself that makes it so that vendors have to charge to get data, which we don't do. We don't come in and charge $100,000 and then another $50,000 to pay somebody to collect data because the school's not going to do it for you. We don't do that. So I just wanted to speak to the fact that it is unlikely that you're going to get data from an at-risk school when you're trying to give them a program that doesn't require writing a grant and waiting a year for this program for them to get the money to make it happen. All right? Years pass by and kids are dying and getting shot and being drug dealers and going to jail. That is a very risky business model. So what we do when we come in and we offer a very competitive price point to a school district, for the school district to say there's no way we can manage or force the teachers to teach this with fidelity, it is an impossible, infinite loop of failure when the school systems are designed this way. And for this reason and many other reasons, the popular consensus throughout the corporate world is that the education system is broken. And it needs to be re-engineered. All right? And it's broken for certain people. It's broken for the masses. White males consist of 70% of the engineers in this country consistently. Those white males can teach their children the fundamentals of entrepreneurship and what engineering is about so that they can innovate. But black and Latino children don't have that luxury. And that is one of the reasons why this is sorely needed. It is not a wish list item. This is a necessity. Now, food for thought here. Most employers believe that a college degree or education is only good for two things. They believe that it's only good because it proves that a young person can start a very difficult task and see it through to the end, see it through to completion. And they can think critically so that they can make decisions. They can compare two different things. They can identify the difference. And they can make a choice as to how they should proceed moving forward based on the comparison of two different or two separate pieces of information. And this is evidenced by 90% of people that graduate with a college degree do not work in the majors in which they studied. So that's just food for thought there. But moving forward on the K-12 space, many teachers, and I've been doing this for now 15 years, speak to the fact that social and emotional learning and social and emotional intelligence and civic literacies and problem solving skills, those are the skills that play more into the success and grade point averages and bringing up their test scores than just the notion of the three A's, adding or arithmetic. I don't remember what they are, but being able to do math, spelling, and arithmetic. Jesus, that's not the three A's, but be able to read and write and spell, and those things, the ability to do those things are not as important as these skills that you see here before you when it comes to being successful. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Jesus, I thought I was having a lapse here. Okay, so, and the point of this, the entire point of this is that to exercise these skills, the best place to do that is in an entrepreneurial context. You're not going to get civic literacies, or you're not going to get that much emotional intelligence just by doing reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 R's, I think, is what they're called. All right. You're going to be able to develop those skills that are going to increase your ability to do better in school by developing your social and emotional intelligence. And what other place best to develop your social and emotional intelligence and your ability to work well with others, leadership skills, than when you're all in a group trying to figure out how you're going to create a product and sell it? Who's going to be in charge of what? Okay, so basically what we're saying here, and then critical thinking skills, that's textbook engineering, which we go into in detail as far as critical thinking and your ability to invent new products. That's just textbook critical thinking, right? Problem solving skills, technology literacy, innovation skills, which we believe that we have a stronghold on because none of the other programs that we compete with focus in on innovation in the way that it should be focused in on from a technological perspective, with something called logic and logic statements. All right, we have our own proprietary logic statement. So this slide basically is saying that if you really want the kids to do well in school and get better grades, the 3 R's, just drilling them on that, is not what's going to, as far as the data has shown, is not what's going to increase their grade point averages. It's these skills, right? So, and in the real world, people don't do their homework on their own. They do it in study groups. So if you want to increase these skills, entrepreneurship, hands down, is the best place to give your students the ability to practice and exercise these muscles. And so for that reason, and when you mix it with STEM, when you take into consideration the fact that technology is now becoming such a part of our lives that most employers in the very near future are saying that every student needs to be able to do computer coding. Not just the few quote-unquote nerds, all of them. So this mixture, this innovation, as we see it, of integrating entrepreneurship and STEM, regardless of the fact that we may not have all of the data that other programs have that are incidentally not working, if you just look at it from a common sense perspective, this is the best way to increase grade point averages and prepare students for success in college and career. And excuse me this long-winded way of going about explaining this, but basically, eSTEM from our perspective is the future of education. So in closing here, I think we've learned a number of things. I think we've come to the conclusion, or I hope that you agree with us, that evaluating everything based on data with the current construct of the Department of Education is an ineffective way of vetting the effectiveness of a program. There are too many anomalies that people that are close to the situation, and I mean everybody from TED Talks are ranting and raving about how education is broken, how it's not addressing the needs of the people. I mean, CEOs and hiring managers are upset with the Department of Education. I'm not here to badmouth the Department of Education, but as a salesperson, if you buy a BMW and find out that the water pump goes at 5,000 miles on a BMW, and you go to Audi and tell them this, the Audi salesperson is not going to say, the Audi salesperson is going to be like, yeah, you shouldn't have bought a BMW. It doesn't work. And they're going to lay into BMW. All right. I mean, that's just sales 101. All right. So it is impossible for me to sit here and say that what's not working is working, and not identify the fact as to why it's not working, because it's going to ruffle feathers. I mean, would you rather ruffle feathers, or would you rather see young black and brown kids with their heads blown off because they believe that they need to sell drugs to be successful in this? I mean, what are we doing here? So we've also, I think we've come to the conclusion that there is a need for change, and data is not going to be the flashlight that leads us to this change. We're going to have to look at what's right in front of our face and examine what's going on in the world. What's going on in the world is that we're in an information age right now, and the current way things are moving is going to leave a lot of people in a very vulnerable situation. More acutely, the African American Latino communities, where there have been engineering programs out there that are really cool. I mean, if I was an administrator, I would opt for P-TECH and Project Lead the Way. There's nothing else out there except for eSTEM. eSTEM is out here. And I'm not saying that you should discard or throw away your P-TECH program or your Project Lead the Way program. I'm saying that, as is the case when I was selling technology in the corporate world, and I would walk into a chief information officer's office, and he would say, listen, there's new patches and upgrades to my PBX or my phone system or my server, and I need to pay for the latest patches and upgrades. eSTEM is a patch and an upgrade that you can layer into whatever you're doing right now, and upgrade what you're doing right now to equal that of the Ivy League. That's what we're saying. And if you don't have any tech system, or you don't have any STEM program, or you don't have any entrepreneurial program, and you're sort of flying out there with just the traditional 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, then eSTEM is going to quickly bring you up to speed with whatever anybody else is doing. And you can layer this into, if you're doing computer programming, if you're doing robotics, you have to take into account that this is not, technology is no longer something that just the nerds have to develop a certain level of acumen in. Technology and technological literacy has to be for all your students. And the way it's being taught now with Project Lead the Way or P-TECH, that's just for 10 kids in a school. You have 400, 500 kids in the school, and you're telling me that you're only going to give 10 of them technological literacy? That's not technology. That's not efficient. That's not moving society forward. All right, this eSTEM gives you as the principal or the administrator the ability to give every single student in your district technological literacy equivalent to what students are receiving at the Ivy League, as well as their parents. So I hope that is appealing to you. I hope you see that as a necessity. Many of my associates that are working in corporate say that this is not a wish list, or this is not something that you can see as, oh, well, this is a necessity. This is the way society is going. This is the inevitable. And I'm hopeful that you see that, and I'm hopeful that you will reach out to us. My name is Bintel Powell. I'm the CEO of Bandit Publishing. My number is 516-902-9837, and I'm hoping that you will reach out and give me a call so we can discuss how we can integrate this into your school. Have a great day.